For 29 seasons, this show has invited thousands of guests with all kinds of diverse points of view. And we have been asking our next guest to join us for a while now. So we're glad that he's taken us up on the offer today. Please welcome author of the new book, Communion. This show has invited thousands. Finding My Way Back to Faith, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. We're glad that he's taken us.
Yo, can y'all hear me, guys? Can y'all hear me, guys? What's up, guys? Testing. Can you hear me?
I was surprised at how tall you were. He's very tall.
Well, if you only see somebody on TV, you just see their, in my case, giant head. So
We all
it hides how
have
tall I
giant
am.
heads,
That's right.
We are the table of big heads here.
So this is a
Alyssa,
show of MAGA Republicans, right? That's
Yeah,
what my
right,
media
yes.
team told me? Okay, good.
well, we'll find out. I think you have the first question, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talk to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part, because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that I'm proudest about most, because as some of you may know, I grew up in one of these towns that was forgotten by the leaders in Washington of both parties, is that you're seeing, that's Middletown, Ohio. That's my hometown in southwestern Ohio. It was a proud steel town. I was raised by a grandfather who was a union steel worker, is that those jobs disappeared. Those factories closed down. The thing that I'm most excited about is you do see a large amount of capital investment coming into our country. Factories being built, construction jobs are way up, manufacturing jobs are starting to catch up. So there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote.
Okay. So President Trump has called affordability.
You hear this? J.D. Vance, a never Trumper. Never Trumper. He didn't like Trump. You know, he criticized him. He even accused him of being, a predator. And now how time changes, right? That he's kissing his ass, defending them on the View and whatnot. You know, come on. It's pretty obvious that all these politicians are compromised in some way, shape, or form, you know. That's how I see it. But let's continue.
A hoax. He said that, not me. He's pouring money into this ballroom of his and the reflecting pool. Oh, don't forget the Arch de Trompe, I call it, and a White House cage match. All these things. Why is he doing them when you just, everybody knows that Americans are struggling? What is he spending all this money for?
Well, I got to defend the president on the hoax point. What the president said is the idea that Republicans caused the affordability problem is a hoax. And I think that's true. If you go back to the Biden administration, inflation got up to 9% under the Biden administration, okay? Right now it's at 3.5%. By the way, too high. We're doing everything that we can to bring it back down to 2.5%, which is where most people would like to see it. But
He's treating the White House like his own property house, you know, changing whatever. Have you seen how he's changed the White House? It's like gold now. Uh, all gold plated and shit, like bringing marble from Italy. It's just, I thought that was the people's house, but apparently not to Trump.
But we inherited an affordability problem. We're doing a lot to make it better. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more work to do. But the president knows that a lot of Americans are struggling. In fact, he ran on that. He talked about it. And we've done some things and made some good progress on that point.
He just said he loves the inflation.
What he said, Anna, what he said is that he loves the fact
He
that the
said it.
inflation
Now,
is going to
look,
come down
plain
when this
semantics.
war is over. That's
Plain
what he
word
said.
semantics
That
wasn't
now.
a direct.
That's
Are you
not
his,
what he
wait, are
said,
you
but
his
it's okay.
interpreter?
Trump said literally that he loves inflation. All right. He said he loves inflation. How are you gonna spin that? How are you gonna spin that to defending him and kissing his ass like JD Vance does now? Uh he said Trump says he loves inflation. How are you gonna defend that? How is that possible? Well, it is possible because they're on that team and they're kissing the ass and supporting that. He has to support his boss. Otherwise, he's not gonna be favored to be president, in 20 was it 28, 2030, when the run for office again and the main election. So I mean, I'm just saying that these people are very two-faced politicians.
Or are you his vice president? Come on.
Well, look. What the president said. People were asking about the inflation. They were asking about the affordability problem, which again is very real. And what he said is, "I love the inflation because it's going to come down when the war is over." And now, again, we already see gas prices. Gas prices today, $4.06 a gallon, too high, but way down from where they were just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot we got to do, but I think that we're doing as much as we can. We're going to keep on working at it. And again, the American people are going to make their verdict, but I think that we have a very credible case to run on, that we brought a lot of new investment. We're building the factories. That is going to pay serious dividends for the American people over the long haul.
When?
Well, Joy, if you look at manufacturing jobs,
Okay.
those jobs are increasing at a large number. Construction jobs are doing a little bit better. So what happens is the construction jobs to build the factories, and then the manufacturing workers go back to work. That also leads to rising wages. That's one of the things that I'm very proud of, is if you look at the amount that wages are going up now compared to, say, 2022, they're going up way.
Here it is. Look, they're defending the economy. The economy is like it's basically like Biden, right now, higher gas prices, higher groceries, everything has gone up, you know, and so Trump owns, he has to own this, right? He has to own it, uh, and blaming other people, blaming other presidents for this is pretty stupid. It's like, look, if this is your presidency, you've caused this, who goes into a war in midterm election year? That alone should tell you that's ignorance at its best, with these politicians. But you know, um, he's losing support from all demographics. Trump is losing support. He's in the negatives in some of these polls, and people don't want to even acknowledge that. They're scared of the reality of this situation. Go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Faster. That's a good thing. The affordability problem. Again, gas, way too high right now. Certain things way too high. Rents have been either flat or down for 12 months now. So there are things that are showing signs of life, things that are showing signs of progress. My view, I'm sure you guys don't agree with it, is that we inherited a mess and we're fixing it. But sometimes it takes a long time to fix a mess.
Sonny.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, according to a new report from the New York Times, you were the leading voice behind the scenes to release the Epstein files, and we applaud you for that. And you warned top officials, including top DOJ officials, at strategy meetings taking place inside the Situation Room. We understand that there are tapes of those meetings, that this was a huge problem for the base. The report says you even floated having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to clear the president's name, but you were rebuffed by your people. Why?
Well, I'd say, first of all, don't believe everything that you read in any newspaper, whether it's a right-leaning paper or a left-leaning
any of it
paper,
true?
because as you guys know, well, there are things that are true, things that are false, and things that are
What
totally
part of it is
missing
true?
context. Well, here's what I'll say. So, number one, I am, frankly, kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff, and that story says that that's one of
So they start blaming the media, the newspapers, the articles. It's like they're not, no one is telling the truth according to them. Nothing is factual, nothing is straight. Uh, and so they always will be blaming the media for, exposing their lies, right? That's how politicians operate. They don't like being exposed to the public, to the media, and that's why they always blame the media with they're fake news and they're don't they're biased and all this. I mean, in reality, if one news agency is saying the same thing and others say the same thing, at what point do you think they're lying about whatever they're doing? It's crazy, right? But let's continue.
one of the things that's true is that some people called me a conspiracy theory
Chief of
on the
Staff,
Epstein
Susie Wiles,
stuff.
called you a
And
conspiracy
I love
theorist.
Susie, but absolutely, she thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist on the Epstein stuff because I think that it's crazy that you had this guy who is clearly a sex predator who was hanging out with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Like, that really bothered me. I don't know what's there, of course. Nobody knows exactly what happened unless you were there, but that really bothered me, and I wanted to have full transparency. What I disagree with is the idea that the White House wasn't committed to full transparency. We have to remember, like, I was inside the room when some of these decisions were made. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, the one that the president signed, the one that led to all these files that we're seeing, the emails. By the way, again, sorry, Joe, I do have to defend my boss. I know you guys don't always appreciate this, but, one of the things you see in the
You
Epstein
mean you gotta
emails
kiss his
is that
ass
Jeffrey Epstein hated
when you
Donald
were
Trump.
a
And that
never
Donald
Trumper,
Trump
right?
literally reported Jeffrey Epstein to the police. That's
But
one of the
they
things
were-
that
they
came
were
out of
be-
these
They were
files.
best friends for about a decade.
They-
And remember, he signed that Transparency Act under duress when some Republican women, Congresswomen like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, did not give in to his pressure of not signing. He
let
brought
me-
See, that's the facts. That's the facts they don't want to talk about. That Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, and others they forced Trump through Congress to release the files, the Epstein files. He didn't want. He could have done it without doing that, but he didn't. Why? Well, you know, he has to protect his Marjorie Taylor Greene said he has to protect his elite business buddies that are probably on those files, and so co-conspirators. He has even Lufkin working for him in his administration or in his regime, and he was in those files, right? So it is something that people don't want to acknowledge, but it's there, man. Why? You want to rewrite history? You want to rewrite history to benefit or to favor that Trump is doing this and that? It's just ludicrous, and it's gaslighting at its best. But
Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her into caving on not voting for that bill.
So let me respond to that. So
That's all true.
Let me respond to that. So number one is, yes, Donald Trump, and he said this, he knew Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. He also threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club when he found out he was a creep and reported him to the police. That's something that the media often misses when it reports the story. They tell the fact that they knew each other.
all right, so Trump. The story is that supposedly Trump kicked him out, but he was already they were sharing masseuses, between them. Some of them were working with Trump, and then Epstein would take them and do whatever with them in the island and in airplanes and shit. So I mean, he forgets that, right? He just wants to make Trump look good, but the the thing is that he was in that world and knew what was going on, but did he do anything besides what kick him out? And then what would he do? Oh, he went to the report him to the cause, right? Well, uh nothing happened in that period, right? So what's the point of him doing that? But he knew what was going on. Trump knew what was going on. It's obvious that he knew, but he didn't want to get involved, maybe, or he was complicit. Let's be honest, right?
Other in the 80s, which the president himself admits, they ignore the fact that he narked on him to the police and led ultimately to JeffreyEpstein's downfall. To that point, Anna, you know the Republican Party. Well, it's one of the things that led to law enforcement investigation. But on the point that you made,
it was allegedly over a real estate deal that they got into a fight over.
but the email says
And
actually
they didn't just know each other. Let's just be truthful and transparent here. They didn't just know each other.
He's in a lot of
They were
pictures.
incredibly close friends.
he reported him to the police.
Gaslight.
That's what I'm saying. That is objective. That is objectively true. But Anna made,
Continue.
but Anna made another point that I think Whoopi, if I may,
No,
because
go
Anna made a
ahead.
very important point. This question about did Donald Trump release these files only under duress from Republicans? And Anna, you know the Republican Party probably better than I do. The idea that Donald Trump runs around afraid of Republican congressmen as opposed to the other way around is kind of crazy.
Well, it was a bipartisan, though. It was Republicans and Democrats.
But because the Republicans control the House and the Senate, particularly the Senate, you need the Republican sign-off. What the president did is, look, I will say this. Again, I was in there in the meetings. He was very frustrated that the Democrats were making this about him when he's like, look, I threw the guy out of my club. I am the guy who reported him to the police, or one of the people who reported him to the police. The president was frustrated about that, absolutely. But he eventually came to say, you know what? Let's just get everything out there. Let's have this out in the public. And he actually called the senators. I was there. He called the senators and said, you know what? Pass this bill, I'll sign it. And that was it.
Well, then let me follow up briefly. Let me follow up briefly.
Yes.
It sounds like you believed that there would be men in the files who would be held accountable, rightfully so. And the American people are with you on this. Why haven't we seen the release of over 2.5 million additional Epstein file documents?
There you go. There have been zero arrests of anybody in the Epstein files, co-conspirators, whatever. Zero. Hell, Trump has some of them working with him. So I'm just saying that they know what's going on. They know who they protect, and it's and so they're protecting and defending those people in the with all the redactions. You clearly can see they're defending or protecting those people that were involved with all this Epstein fiasco. So I'm just saying that zero arrests have been made in this Epstein files. Zero. And people still defend this and act like it's nothing going on. That you know so I'm just saying that she brings a good point to this.
It seems like you are someone that is on the right side of history on this.
So we have released, I think it's 6 million files or 6 million pages of documents. My understanding is the 2.5 million, Sonny. I'm going to check on this to make sure, but my understanding is that a lot of those are duplicates of things that have already been released.
So then
We're not
release them,
holding,
but
we're
not gonna have any
we're
questions.
we're not holding anything back. Some of those things are like the courts have to order you to release them. So that was one thing that we confronted. You talk about this situation in meetings is, there was a big bunch of files that existed, I think, in the Southern District of New York, or maybe it was some other jurisdiction. But we were like, we want to release these files, but you need the court approval in order to release the files. Sometimes we would apply to release the files, and the courts would say no. So those particular documents, I would need to actually know exactly what you're talking
Because
about.
3.5 million documents were released, and my understanding is 2.5 million have not been released.
Those may have been the ones that are under court. So I don't know what the documents
Can I
you're
ask you
talking
something?
about,
Do
but
you
I'm
think-
telling you,
Let me go to
we're
break. Let me go to break.
Sure.
Let me go to break.
We have
Because
plenty of
people
time.
are looking at me, going,
unless
So he's like, oh, we don't know about the rest. Some of them may be duplicates. Some of them the judge needs to release them. Like, what are you saying, dude? And Pam Bondi didn't even say this shit, when in the hearing. So I don't know. They're very good at deflecting, defending, and making excuses for what they were supposed to do. This is supposedly the most transparent uh regime that we're supposed to get, right? And they're not that. They say a good game, but I don't know. But let's continue.
Let's talk about the book. I'm here to sell books. Communion. Buy my book, please.
So let's talk about
Eventually
your book.
we
Yeah, let's
will,
make
but
money,
this
right?
is a
You're
good
gonna need it when
opportunity
you
for
try to
us
run
to
for
get some
president.
clarity
Of
on
course.
stuff.
Great.
We'll be back with more with Vice President Joe Biden.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44.
Look, guys, this guy right here
We are back with Vice
is trying
President
to
J.D.
save
Vance.
face.
Sarah,
He's
you got the
trying to
question.
Yes, Mr. Vice
stay
President, in
away
your new
as
book,
much, but
Communion,
also
you write about your
be
personal evolution with
with
faith, from
Trump
evangelical to
in a
atheist
way, right?
to
defend
Catholic,
them and whatnot.
convert.
But
And you
he's
also
trying to
explain
stay
your
clear of
evolution
all this.
similarly on Trump, from calling him America's Hitler to America's best hope. Now, as someone who has admitted to chasing ambition, which you write about in the book, in the past, but now says your faith brought you back to your priorities, I have to kind of use your own words that sit with me from 2016.
Sure.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching when we apologize for this man. Lord, help us. And I think about that all the time because as a fellow Christian, that is something that weighs on my heart as I watch this country and the leadership at the top, because it's also something I have to explain to my kids, which I know we also share, this idea that our greatest privilege and responsibility are these young people we're raising.
Of course.
So help me find the words to explain to my children what they're witnessing right now.
Well, you know, first of all, it's been well covered that I was a critic of Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here as the Vice President of the United States
what happened?
in the Trump administration. Well,
Yeah,
Joy,
he was a
little
critic.
humility.
Let's watch a video where he actually says he's a never Trumper.
J.D. Vance, in his own words.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. As somebody who doesn't like Trump, I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I didn't vote for Trump because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious, him being really outrageous and offensive.
On Twitter, Vance called Trump, quote, reprehensible, an idiot, and Vance loves Mitt Romney.
I'm a never Trump guy.
That's the real J.D. Vance. Club for Growth Action is responsible for the content of this ad.
So there you have it. This guy sold his morals, his values, and principles. How is it that all these politicians that talk bad about the president get hired to be in their administration? Biden did it with Kamala Harris, even though Kamala Harris was literally calling him a racist in the debates, right? So this is where the uniparty or uh they're part of the whole system, and they just play a role in the show for the people. These are not sincere people. These are liars, corrupt, two-faced snakes. All these politicians have one thing in common. They are trying to gain power, get that position, even become president like JD Vance is going to try to do, right? But we'll see. Let's continue.
Actually, I think that when you make predictions and those predictions turn out to be false, you got to ask yourself, well, what made me wrong about that? What did I not understand or not appreciate? For example, I said that Donald Trump's economic policies would not lead to wage growth. They did in the first term. That was actually a major, major thing. I said that we couldn't bring back any of those factory jobs because I kind of had given into this idea that those jobs were disappearing. But actually, Donald Trump, you saw a manufacturing boom during that administration.
So there's a certain point.
Let me just. So there's a certain point where you say, I made predictions about this. I ended up being wrong. Yeah. And in politics and anything, I think it's important to just say, you know what? I got some things wrong, and I was wrong about him. He was a very successful president. It's one of the reasons why I've been so supportive of him.
But you go on in the book to explain that good policy was maybe one of your justifications, but the quote, and when you tweeted that or X'd it, was not about policy. It was what Christians were willing to excuse. And that's the part I can't get past. What are you willing to excuse in the name of power?
Well, I would say fundamentally that one of the things I underappreciated about Donald Trump is that so many of the things that people said about him weren't actually true. Again, you talk about humility. Okay, so I see Donald Trump, I see a clip of him, or I see even not even a clip of him, but reporting about something that he said, and I take it at face value. For example, let's just go back to one of the most controversial things Donald Trump said during the first term that I was wrong during the first campaign, is that I was led to believe by the stories. I read stories that said Donald Trump said that all Mexicans were rapists. He never said that. What he said is that the certain South American countries, Central American countries were
Look, let's call a spade a spade. He actually did not say that, right? I think he said that some of them were, criminals and rapists. He didn't say all of them. He didn't say the majority were. Uh, so I'll give him that. Let's call a spade a spade. I'm not gonna, you know, lie just because you know, I don't like JD Vance or MAGA now. But the truth is truth. Let's say how it is. But let's continue.
releasing criminals into our country, including Mexico. By the way, that was objectively true. So
There
it's
is
not
no
so much
evidence of
Christians.
that.
None.
Oh,
Fidel
None.
Castro did that in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift. There have been many, many journalists, including CNN, where you used to work and be my colleague, that have tried to find evidence of that. There is
See, I really don't like this lady. I don't, especially when Biden was president, because she would do the same thing, defend Biden to the teeth, you know, and she's very hypocritical sometimes. Sometimes she contradicts herself, uh, because she also has a narrative, an agenda to play, right? But let's continue. Let's see what she sings.
no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up, and we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't like it was in the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the insane asylums, and let people flood Florida. I lived through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
was absolutely
so I don't know how
a-
you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think that's a problem.
Vice President, can I just add one more thing? Because you do speak about immigration at length in this book.
Sure.
And I believe, as a Christian, I can tell my kids why it's important to have borders. I get that. There are laws, there are resources. I get all that things. It's much harder to explain when I see someone dragged out of a house or wrongly taken to a thing that isn't a violent criminal. It's a little more nuanced as a parent to try to say when someone's referred to as vermin or scum, when I teach them in school about people that have done that before, but this is different. It's very hard as a parent and a Christian to say both things.
And you actually say in the book, you talk about this.
Oh, here they go. They're using dogma. They're using religion to justify immigration laws, breaking immigration laws, crossing the border illegally. They're using that. And I'm not I don't I'm you know, I'm I don't believe in just breaking the laws. If this is a country of laws, then it should be respected, right? I can't go to Mexico without a permit, for getting at the border, to go into Mexico and stuff. So why are others just they can do whatever they want, and that's what they're justifying. You know, uh, there are no borders. They're globalists, progressive globalists, liberals. I don't, and they think they believe no immigrant is a criminal or can do violence. If we have our own criminals, why invite more criminals? You're just playing Russian roulette with your life, your family's life. A lot of these they cause you know DWIs, wrecks, crashes, and if you don't believe me, go into YouTube and watch you know illegal immigrant you know uh crash into a car, family or whatever, and they've had killed people you know. And so, I mean, it's thing that, you know, these Democrats, they're very keen on trying to justify that immigration thing, illegal immigration. But let's continue, guys.
You talk about this
I do.
struggle, this internal struggle
Of
in the
course.
book, and you talk about moral trade-offs that result in favoring a strict migration policy without dehumanizing anyone. But listen, over 50 people have died in ICE custody. There are thousands of children, 6,200, that are being held in places like Dilley Detention Center. The people that have visited those detention centers, I don't know if you have, talk about the subhuman, infrahuman conditions, the lack of clean water, the lack of medical attention, the lack of education. I would urge you as a Christian and as a father to visit those detention centers where the children are being held and make sure that the conditions are up to the values that we hold in this country.
So you guys have thrown a lot at me, and I see we got 30 seconds left here. But let me say,
You're
number
the
one,
Vice President. You can go long.
I'd like to pick up on this theme because I think it's really important. We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. That is the balance that, look, law enforcement, what I'd say about this, law enforcement is always inherently not a very pretty process, especially when you're dealing sometimes with violent people, with people who are resisting arrest. Some of the people that I've been told by the media were completely peaceful, had never violated any laws. You actually look into the record and you find out that those people were actually being violent, or they did have a criminal record. They had a sex trafficking conviction.
Don't have criminal records. The majority of people that ICE is rounding up and taking out of their homes from their families, they're separating families. They're using children as bait.
But
the majority are not criminals.
But can I respond to that, guys? Let me just say this. Okay. So you talk about the children. Here's what I'd say.
The majority are not criminals, according to her, but there is criminals. So is she willing to play Russian roulette with her family and having more criminals coming in, you know, and risking that odds, you know, having those odds, you know? And besides that, she's gonna make an excuse or an argument that you know, they're separating families and whatnot. You know, when you drink and drive and cause a wreck, and especially you have kids, they're gonna separate you, right? You're gonna go to prison or jail, and those kids, if they don't have a mom or whatnot, where do you think they're gonna go? You know, they're gonna go to CPS, you know, to a foster family or whatnot, temporary foster family. So, you know, I'm not gonna buy that, you know, sentimental bullshit argument, because that's what they use. They use emotional programming tactics to try to sway and persuade people into that mindset that they have. This can.
Do we know that during the last administration, we had tens of thousands of children who were sex trafficked by the cartels, who were brought into our country in profoundly dangerous and predatory conditions?
Let's talk about this administration.
But here's the point. Unless you enforce the border, you invite that kind of conduct. You think that our immigration policies are inhumane based on the reporting of one person.
So he brings in the cartels, right? So far, he hasn't. This regime, the Trump regime, aka Epstein regime, they haven't done anything about the cartels, right? I mean, to take them out. There shouldn't be no terrorists, which they declare them as what as terrorists, right? In North America, we're so concerned with helping the Israel little hats over there and their problems in helping Israel with their enemies. But here in North America, our enemies are right next door, you know, and we are not doing anything. Why is that? Well, there's different reasons, but that's for a different topic. I just wanted to say that because you know they want to throw the problem to you know something that they said they were gonna take care of, and they haven't because we're so busy with the Middle East again, you know. But let's continue.
With a political bias, what I'm telling you is that it's inhumane
not one
to allow
person.
cartels to sex traffic people across our
And you
border.
guys have done a
by the way,
great job
Hold on, yo.
closing the
Please
border.
hold on.
I appreciate that.
Hold
We're going to get
on.
you back, Anna.
We're coming back with more with the Vice President, and I've got questions for
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Time. How do you justify both things?
So let me say first a couple things, Whoopi. So number one, the book is actually way less political than you might think if you were just watching this, because obviously we're getting into the issues of the day.
Right.
95% of the book is really not about politics. I kind of have to write about politics because I'm the vice president, but I want to answer your question.
Right.
So fundamentally, if you think about what is immigration enforcement, immigration is law enforcement. It's somebody who has broken a law. A law enforcement officer has to show up and enforce that law. Now, inherently, sometimes that process is not always going to be pretty if you capture a video clip of it, in the same way that if you arrest somebody for committing a violent or a nonviolent crime, sometimes it's not always pretty. What I'm saying is the Catholic faith is actually I think it strikes the right balance here. It says, the Christian faith, I think this is true of Protestants and Catholics, that you can have borders.
Yeah.
You're allowed to enforce your borders. That means the law enforcement piece of it. But you also have to take certain precautions and certain care, okay? And again, your argument is fundamentally, Whoopi, you're saying that we don't strike the right balance. I disagree with you about how we apply that, but nobody, hopefully, is saying we're not allowed to have a border.
No,
what
sir.
I'm saying is that in order for us to actually enforce the law, you can't set a standard that says you're not allowed to deport anyone unless they've committed a violent crime. You've got to enforce the law equally.
So let
and
me,
justly.
let me do my follow-up.
You don't have to raise your hand,
Let me do my
Joey.
follow-up.
Yes, I do.
Because you were talking about people. What did black people do to this administration?
Oh God, here we go with the Whoopi's a very she's a very what would you call them? They always bring race into everything. Why is that? Well, she's a race baiter. She's a race baiter, right? Professional race baiter. They want to use the race card to justify or play the victimhood card. They're like, it's already 2026. We're still on race with some people. It's like, it's your behavior. Why do people see race now? I don't understand. It's the people's behavior, their actions. You know, they still blame the color of the skin. They still they probably didn't even live in the 1960s or before that, and they're still blaming race. You know, uh, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's not gonna keep people from living, and having a good life or opportunities. Hell, it's illegal, right? You can't discriminate. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's like their minds are enslaved with that mentality of being oppressed and having you know uh I was using the race card. It's like, damn, so much fatigue, man. Let's continue.
That has allowed it to really stigmatize folks of color. And you know how hard it is. You have folks of color in your family.
Sure.
So when you see, things, the Emmett Till stuff coming down, or them doing all kinds of removal of information of black heroes, how does that sit with you?
Well, what exactly are you talking about, Whoopi? Because you just
I'm talking
I know
about
Emmett Till was
I
Emmett Till
can
was
tell
the
you
kid.
all the stuff. Yeah.
No, I want to know what
understand.
she's.
You don't know
I
what
wanna
I'm
respond
talking
to your
about.
actual point.
So in a lot of the
Museums.
museums,
The race painters, they bring shit up from like I don't think even JD Vance was alive when that shit happened. So they're bringing up things that from the past to try to implement it to with present, and even apply it to the future of what they're trying to do with race and systematic racism and all that bullshit. It's like their minds are so set up to be victims, It's not even funny. But
There's so many. Where they're taking down the actual history that happened in this country. Slavery happened. All kinds of stuff happened. And it seems that it has been very easy for this administration to remove that and also to denigrate Black folks who have worked their behinds off to get this American dream. How do you, I mean, you know better. You know what I'm
Sonny,
talking about,
that was
right?
actually a very helpful intervention because I think the story you're talking about is where, allegedly the administration is holding back the appointments of people based on skin color.
I'm
I've
talking
seen
about
the
a
story.
host of things. I'm talking about Black history getting erased from public spaces. Black voter districts are being dismantled. Black leaders are being sidelined from our ranks. Where do Americans of color fit in this vision? Because it doesn't seem like we fit.
I think,
In the
Sonny,
vision of
my
this
view,
administration.
what do you mean that y'all don't fit? What do you mean y'all don't fit? Y'all are great at sports. I mean, y'all name one black dude that is not in sports that is making it big, and making millions of dollars. You have movie stars that are black. You have, celebrities, singers, hip hop artists. Y'all dominate everything. So I don't understand what you're saying that you don't fit in. It's like you're looking at any little problem and trying to put that race thing into it. It's like nobody cares about your skin color, man. It's just you that is so uh, uh brainwashed or by these race baiters that pick everything out to be like a race thing. It's not, you know. Uh and they get offended about anything. What about you? What are you doing? You're discriminating also against that white dude, against that Asian. You don't talk about black on black crime. You don't talk about, um no, the fathers in black communities or whatnot. It's like you they they selectively choose anything to fit their narrative and their agenda of the racism and stuff. Uh, let's continue.
If I may, since October of last year, there's been something like 6,668 refugees allowed into the country. All but 3 were white South Africans.
So, first of all, I'm very skeptical of that number because we have a lot of different immigration pathways in the United States of America. But let me just address Whoopi's point. Look, first of all, you asked the question, and maybe you don't believe this coming from me, but I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here. But Whoopi, let me just give you an example.
Exactly. Everybody's welcome. Everybody can do what they want. We elected a colored president 2 times. Obama. I'm not gonna say he's black, but he's a colored person, right? So if they don't tell you that America will elect somebody of color, but you still keep thinking that it's racism and putting yourself down in the way that the system or whoever is making you feel like you can't do things. No, it's you. You're the problem. You're the one that does stupid mistakes, poor decisions, and can't be responsible in your actions. You know, how many how many Asians do you see running away from the police when they get stopped, or fight that cop? Fight it in court. Fight in the court. If you're innocent, fight in the court. Why are you fighting the cop, man? The cop is only processing you. They're not gonna do the verdict of you being guilty or not. So always fight in court. Why are you scared? Uh, and then they make excuses for that. Oh, I don't have an attorney and all that. Ah, it's the thing. It never ends. Uh, and it's gonna continue because you have these race baiters always pushing it into the public, into the weak-minded ones. But let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay, so you say that we're anti-minority or
No,
anti-black.
I didn't say that. I asked. See?
Well, okay, fine. Fair.
Don't start any stuff
All
with
right,
me,
okay,
man.
all
Don't
right.
get me in trouble. Don't start no stuff with me. But
I misinterpreted your question,
That's
but
all right.
let me answer your actual question there. What I'm saying, I think, okay, look at Washington, D.C. One of the most democratic and one of the blackest, by a share of population, blackest cities in the United States of America, has seen a radical decrease in violent crimes and sexual assaults and in murders. We have tried to take the crime issue seriously, in part because we believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood.
why does the crime?
And we
where
would-
does the crime step in? This is not about crime.
300,000
This is
black women
about
lost their jobs.
rights.
This is about human
Sonny,
rights.
what you're saying is
Black
we got to do
history's
more on the
been-
economy.
and black history has been
Sonny,
erased from public
Black history
spaces.
is not
That is
erased from
true.
public
Guys,
spaces.
we do
That
have to
is
get to
not
Iran
right.
when we get back.
Yeah,
There's some very
guys,
important news to
I'm
get
telling
to.
you, we celebrate Black history. We celebrate all American history in this administration.
can I ask
You
you
guys
about a
might be
specific
skeptical
piece
of
of
this,
black
but I
He's
promise
got,
you
I
it's
gotta
true.
have to.
Do you
I have
think
to
the
go to
attack
break.
against
Anna,
Michelle
God,
Obama should have
please.
been
We have more with
condemned by the White
Vice
House?
President J.D. Vance when we come back. Don't do that.
Yeah, I told you that lady's annoying. She's very annoying. I
Tell
can't
Monday what you
stand her
need.
sometimes.
We're creating an agent
She's
and
very
naming him
annoying and
Tony.
gets on my nerves.
Now let's give him
She's
context.
rude,
I'm giving Tony.
annoying, and but you can see by yourself. You can see that she's annoying. And she's a Latina, so I criticize anybody. I don't care.
We're back
Oh,
with
does that
Vice
make me
President
racist?
J.D. Vance.
Well,
Joy has the next
how dare
question.
you
Okay,
talk
so in the
about that
book,
Latino.
Mr. Vice
Hey.
President, you make a mea culpa of sorts for calling Democrats childless cat ladies.
Oh, man. My
Okay.
most boneheaded comment.
You say that in the book, that it was boneheaded, which it was.
Thank you.
What were you thinking when you said that?
So Joy said when we were off air that I'm fine, which I think is about the best endorsement that I'm
Well,
going to get
for a
out of Joy
Republican.
Behar for a
For a
Republican.
Republican.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Graded on a curve here at The View. But, you know, I guess one of the things that I try to do, and I'm always, you know, all of us are always learning. You know, you said you were a lapsed Catholic. I'm a bad Catholic. I think all of us, that's why we need grace as Christians, is because we recognize that there are certain things we got to work on.
Right.
But here's what I'd say about that.
How is it that he proclaims he's Catholic, right? But he goes to the Israel wall and is praising that religion or that you know the Jewish religion, you know, Judaism and everything, and submitting to it, knowing that they don't believe in your savior, dude. They don't care for they believe that your savior is in hell, and you're over there kissing their feet, and that doesn't make you and you said it, it doesn't make you a good Catholic because you knowingly know that they don't like your savior, and you know and that's what I see. What's wrong with you is that you're not genuine, and you're not really a believer if you're actually doing that. You know, when we take the mark of the someone would take the mark of the beast, some will not. uh and it's all because if you have faith or you even are of that faith, or believe in our savior. But let's continue, see what he says.
That. So, did that comment actually shed light on something and start a discussion, or did it just close people down? And when I make a comment that just closes people down, instead of trying to appreciate the point that I make, that's a mistake, right? And
Okay.
that's on me to do better.
Okay,
because
then
can I
let
just
me
say,
ask you a
the point that
follow-up.
I'd say on that, Joy, is I do think, in a very subtle, sometimes in a more profound way, I think our country has become more anti-family and more anti-child. It's harder to travel.
All
it's
right,
harder to go to
speaking
a
of
restaurant.
children, have 10
Mr.
seconds.
Vice
Okay.
President,
Do you want-
your grandchild is arriving.
No grandbabies yet.
Not yet. We're very excited for you and Usha, and we wanted to give you a
Thank
view
you.
once.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We will put this on. We'll
J.D.
send you guys a
Vance,
photo.
His new book, Communion, Finding My Way
Child,
Back
I'm
to
so
Faith,
sorry.
is available now. Scan the QR code on your screen to purchase a copy, and we will be right back.
Thank you, guys.
So let me say this. In a way, all these people, they put a show for the public. Oh, we're mad about this and we're mad about that. But they in their little world, they understand each other, you know. Also, let's not be hypocrites, because a lot of MAGA motherfuckers are very hypocrites and senile. Because remember, Margie Taylor Greene went on The View, and what were they saying? Oh, she's a traitor. How dare? Even Trump was saying, oh, she went on The View, and she's a traitor, and has betrayed the MAGA and all this bullshit. What do you see now? You see JD Vance on The View. Is he a traitor? Is he betraying MAGA? This is why I'm saying they're so hypocrites. Be it the left or right, they're fucking hypocrites. And it's just, you know, we're the ones that can see, or in the middle and can see both sides, are just the same bullshit at this point, you know. And it's just like they don't want to see it, they don't want to admit it, acknowledge it, or anything. They just want to gaslight you and brainwash you into being in their little bandwagon. And it's I'm not down for it. Others are. They'll jump off the cliff with this guy and Trump. And before they even criticize or question anything. So this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing, guys. Especially, the boomers. They're very loyal to this bullshit. Uh, and they're hard to wake up. Like, it's just they're not gonna do it. You know. But thankfully, the younger generations are listening and waking up to this bullshit, and calling it out in some ways. But I guess that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me on Art Show. Uh, be doing on YouTube, Kick, Rumble, LO, TikTok. Uh, just trying to do my thing, my own criticism, all this bullshit. Now, if you hate that, then I don't know what to tell you. I thought you were First Amendment. I thought you supported freedom of speech. Oh no, not when they criticize your savior, you know, or or those that are in part of that. But anyways, appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all next time, and we'll keep it, 100 always. Have a good day.